talk about is failure. I'm a failure, and I learned a lot from failing. And yeah, it's supposed to. How many of you wish you had £1 million in your bank account? Okay, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. All those who wish they had £1 million. How many of you think you could achieve getting £1 million in your bank account? Okay, I'm going to tell most of you that you're wrong. It's actually very hard to achieve £1 million in your bank account. So say if you had a business that was turning over £1 million a year, and that business made a reasonable average profit of, say, 10%, that's 100,000. That's still going to take you 10 years to make that million, and the odds of you consistently doing that are rather low. And the problem that we've got as a society is there's a success bias. All the books are about success, the Bransons, the Bezoses, everything else, and we all read them like lemmings. We all think, oh my God, I read this book and suddenly I'm going to be transformed into this super wealthy person. The reality is it's bullshit, right? Most businesses fail. If you look at Bloomberg, 80% of businesses fail within an 18-month period. Everyone sees in every high street, new restaurant opening. And everyone sees new restaurant closing, yeah? That is actually the normal pattern. So certain industries that you go into are overall doomed for failure. The odds of you being the next Gordon Ramsay, the odds of you being the next Marco Pierre White, the odds of you being the next this, are actually very low. But we don't teach people that. And so what this is about is a reality check instead of the $1 million check. Now, the other thing is that Britain has a real culture around failure, where we laugh at it, we scorn it, we don't appreciate it, and we think that people should roll over and die. Whereas America has a completely different thing, where they understand that failure is a normal part of the growth of the person or an individual or business. So if you're in the States and you failed 3 times, they call it Chapter 11, you can still go to a bank and they'll still talk to you, and they'll still listen to you, because they know you've had 3 valuable life lessons. And you might succeed on attempt 4, or attempt 5, or attempt 6. Whereas we generally think, oh my God, you failed, that's it, your life's over. And one of the saddest things about this was there was a guy not so long ago, I'm just trying to find the quote about him, and this is the quote: "I think it's criminal that we don't prepare people for failure. No one should take their own life because a business failed." So this man had tried really hard to be successful, the business failed, and he felt that sense of shame and failure, and he killed himself. That is totally unnecessary, because if we started with the knowledge that failure is common, and our role is to say, okay, I failed, it didn't work, but what do I do next? That would make the difference. So that's why I think we really do need to teach failure more seriously. There's a school, St Paul's Girls' School, and the headmistress there is very forward-thinking, and she's actually introduced Failure Week for her children. In Silicon Valley, they actually have this thing called FailCon, which again is all the startups that didn't work. Because you only hear about the startups that do work. Unicorns, by the way, are very, very rare. That's why they're called unicorns. So everyone who thinks they're going to create the next Uber, the next Amazon, the next this, they are mostly living in fantasy land, I'm afraid. Well, it is a fact, I'm sorry. So there's a success bias. So the people who fail don't write the books, yeah? But the people at the top of the pyramid who write the books, you forget that it is a pyramid, and that pyramid is laden with equally good ideas, equally good passion, equally good effort that didn't work out and didn't come to fruition. And then we can look at what makes people fail, and then we can look at what is more likely to make people be successful. But even that we don't even get right all the time. Personally, I've read about 300 business books, and one of my favorites is a guy called Jim Collins, Good to Great. Fantastic book. So Jim writes this book and he says, all these wonderful companies that consistently went from better to better. 10 years on, half of them are bust. That is the reality. Toyota was regarded as a great success story. Toyota is almost bust right now. So the reality is that business cycles are what they are, and there's elements of luck in it. One of the other lessons I think we all need to learn is fail fast. While you're young, while you've got the opportunity, try something. Let it not work and learn from that. But we don't teach people to fail fast. We should do. So, and there's a great quote from Samuel Beckett: "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better." So each time you fail, you're learning something, and that actually is the way to iterate and be successful ultimately in business, not just by thinking that I'm going to start here, it's going to end there, I'm going to be in a mansion, I'm going to have a Porsche, I'm going to have, XXX. That's not the reality. And you know, there are quotes from everyone from Edison, Ford, Confucius, Maya Angelou's mum, Atul Gawande, Roosevelt, everyone's talked about failure, but no one's really put it together in one coherent unit. So that's one of the books that I'm going to write. It's Dr. Charlie's Guide to Failure. Now, the other thing, there's a lovely quote from a guy called Zig Ziggler. Has anyone heard of Zig Ziggler? Yeah, one of the great salespeople. And he makes, I think this is a lovely point, it's very concise. Failure is an event, not a person. So that's the other thing. You need to be able to depersonalize failure so you wouldn't get so depressed that you kill yourself. Failure is an event, not a person. And the other thing that is reality about a lot of business is that, so who's doing an MBA at the moment, or who's done an MBA? Okay, a few of you have done MBAs. But I would argue that a lot of what you learn in MBA is actually not relevant to real life business. You'll learn how Coca-Cola does its marketing, how other things, etc., etc. But when you try to apply those in a smaller scale, they're not going to work for you. And the other lesson I would say is that the best school for learning about business is the MBA of hard knocks. And it's the reality of actually getting out there, doing business, finding what worked, and one of the trendy terms at the moment is pivot, right? So what happens, you come in with an idea, you think you're going to be the best things in sliced bread in area A. Within a very short time, no one's at the door. The market has given you a big clue. Now at this point, if you're stupid enough to continue doing the same thing, that's it, that's the death spiral. But if you're smart enough to pivot, and realize that the market didn't want what you originally thought, and you've listened to your customers, and you started to understand what the market actually wants, that's where success will come from, not just sticking religiously or doggedly to the thing that you thought would be the thing that would do it. So we've mentioned people like Bezos and Branson, and I will change your thinking on this, and I'd say that they're not your buddies, okay? So let me tell you my story and why Bezos is not my buddy. Okay? So I grew a medical business, and I grew it pretty well, and I was a pretty smart guy, and I did all of that. So I grew my business about 1.4 million a year. And it had 1.4 million a year about 4 years continuously. It was pretty good starting from zero. So we did 0, 300,000, 700,000, I think 1.4. And we had clients like Rolls-Royce, BP, Centrica, and everything. We were providing medical services to all of those. What were my problems along the way? Well, my problems along the way were that I started recruiting too many people. You know, I thought, oh, this is great, you know, I need this, I need that. And in the early days of business, you think there's so much money coming in, you forget what needs to go out, right? So you start buying all the fancy furniture, all the this, all the that. And it's true, because there's this, you know, there's this buzz, there's this excitement, you're the big deal and everything else. But the reality is, I didn't need all the people I had, and not all the people I had were working for me. Let me tell you an amusing story. Towards the end, right, this is in the death spiral. There's a girl who had been working for me, and she said, Charlie, we're so busy, and emails flying in left, right, and centre. I can barely cope, we need another person, right? Sacked her, right? Took over her email, right? And this is within 48 hours, 72 hours of sacking her. Sweet FA had come in. People didn't know she'd gone. So this person is telling me that she was so busy that, you know, she couldn't cope. You know, this was just fantasy land and bullshit. So keep lean is the other lesson in the early stages of business. And I said the word sack, and I use it advisedly. Who has sacked anyone? Good. You are real business people. No, I'm serious, because the thing about business is about people, right? And when you get your team together, some of your team are committed and passionate and have the same vision, some don't. They're just lazy asses who are riding your tail, right? Now, your job as a business person is to realize who those people are and to get rid of them very early while the law allows you to do so. You keep them too long, then everything's on their side. So within the first year, ideally, I think you can just about stretch it to the second year. So you should be doing those appraisals, those assessments, all those things that tell you this is the wrong person for my company. There will never be anyone you sack that you'll regret doing it, not having done it earlier. The second thing that will happen when you sack somebody, you'll have heard a few horror stories. The moment you sack them, you'll hear 100 horror stories. All the customers who were pissed off, all the other members of staff who were unimpressed, all of those things will come back to reveal themselves to you. So there's some lessons in there as well. Anyone interested more in this subject, there's a great book by Matthew Syed, it's called Black Box Thinking, and Matthew Syed has written a lot about failure, and he talks about failures in my industry, which is the medical industry. So what led to our failure in the end? So we're turning over 1.4 million. I'm getting pretty arrogant at this point. I think I'm the bee's knees. I think I can grow this to 3. I think I can grow this to 5. I just have to meet more corporates. I just have to do the Charlie charm and the networking. It's all going to work out wonderfully. And I had a critic, yeah? And I'm no longer married to that critic. Okay? all the way. No, but this is a really valid point. It's a story against me, believe me. So all the way along, my wife was saying, it's not working the way you think it is. Because she was seeing that there wasn't really profit in it. There was turnover, which was my vanity, but there was no real profit, which would have been my sanity, right? So she knew that there was something wrong in this dynamic, which I couldn't see, right? So, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, look, Jeff Bezos has started Amazon, and it's not making any money, and Jeff's going to grow into this amazing thing, and I'm going to be like Jeff Bezos. But no, most of us can't be like Jeff Bezos. He's now worth about 86 billion. And his shares are $1,000. But for about 10 years or more, Amazon made sweet FA, no money, minus money. It was, you know, potentially an absolute disaster. But the myth that you can buy into is, oh, I can be like Jeff. I can wait it out until finally the business is successful and don't worry about the profit. But I would say that no, if you're serious about running a business, worry about the profit from day one. So the Mr. McCorber rule that what goes out must be less than what comes in is a very simple one. And there's 3 R's of failure. There's a reality, then there's a resilience around being able to redo something. So I kind of bounce back, but not quite as high. And then making some sort of recovery. So, a few other quotes. This is from Charlie Munger. Does anyone know who Charlie Munger is? Charlie Munger is the really good friend of Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett and he are really the people who grew Berkshire Hathaway. So Warren Buffett, the sage of Omaha, is one of the wealthiest guys in the world, and luckily for the world, he's got together with Bill Gates and he's donating a lot of his money to international health issues. But Warren Buffett is the guru of wealth creation, but Charlie Munger is beside him. And Charlie says this, it's not easy to make a big success in capitalism. The usual result is failure. So that's somebody who's succeeded, who's telling the world that, look, it's not really as you often think it is. And according to a recent Wall Street Journal report, only 30 stocks out of more than 2,500 provide 30% of the wealth. So when you actually do that analytic, that shows you that a lot of stocks are quite worthless. And if you look at a lot of British businesses right now, a lot of them are what we call zombie companies. They're only surviving because of a relatively low interest rate. If that interest rate goes up by even 0.25%, most of those businesses will have to go into voluntary liquidation or will fail. And the other thing that you're never told is that most businesses that you perceive as successful are built on debt. So there's companies that you'll know and you think, oh my God, that's an amazing company. But most of the time, that company is in debt. It's not actually in profit. So again, these are some other things that I think more people should know. Now, so borrow little, that's the other thing. So, you know, don't get yourself in debt while you're trying to do your transactions, because that's the over-temptation to over-borrow is really important. How many of you in this room know your own credit score? Show of hands. Okay, it's at least half, that's good. All of you should know your credit score, because it's only through your credit score that you've got reliability as to whether... If you don't know your credit score, you won't be able to know whether the likelihood of getting money. And the other thing I would say is look at the stats of your business model and work out whether you'd lend money to you. Because otherwise, it saves you a lot of fruitless conversations. Because there are certain points in a business's life where you're desperate for money. But the reality is everyone can smell you from 100 miles away. They know that you're desperate, you're struggling. They're not going to lend you money at that point. You know, someone made a great quote that a banker is someone who will lend you an umbrella when it's not raining. That's the basic. Let me just show you this graph. So this is my graph about business, and one of the lessons I learned really is there's 3 rates of growth of a business, right? There's that rate, which is too slow. So if your business is growing too slow, you're not making the profits, you're not succeeding. There's this rate, which is too fast, because you're over-trading, you're over-exceeding your capacity to fulfill your customers' needs. I'm going to be a bit cheeky. No, I'm not going to mention the brand, but there's a Ghanaian food brand, right? I knew it at the early stages, and it was wonderful. You know, it was really tasty and really interesting. I believe she is in this bit of the cycle. Because you go there and there's a bunch of Mexicans and it tastes shit. So it's not the same as when she started. So she's kind of overtraded, lost the value of her Ghanaian food brand in my mind. Thank you. And then there's a group here, this is the right curve for you. So basically, when you're running a business, look at your curve and your curve of growth. You have to grow, you can't stay static. And just work out, am I growing too slow and what are the reasons behind that? Am I actually growing too fast? And is that going to be my problem? And there's many a history of people growing too fast, or am I growing at the right rate? I've just slightly gone over time, I believe. Is that right? So I'm just going to do one last quote, if I may, which I thought was fabulous. I'll just see if I can find it here. Accept and appreciate the need to take risks. That you'll get knocked back and have abject failures. That's just life's journey. Turn up and never give up. And that's from Annabelle Fielding, the CEO of Quintessential Events. I think that sums up the real message. So failure is a part of life, but learn from it, dust yourself down, and move on to the next stage. Thank you.